What did you learn? What was it like, I guess, buying the practice and then, hiring employees or scaling that? Was that a little, I guess, intimidating or overwhelming?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as you get older, you're more risk averse. But when you're younger, you're willing to take risks. And that was the same for me. I bought a practice. I thought I wanted to be in Bellingham because it was just growing so much and it was exciting and the university. But Mount Vernon was closer to Seattle, and but it was just kind of like a town that you drove through.
Yeah.
But I saw a practice come for sale in Mount Vernon, so I went to check it out. There was only 3 operatories built, 3 exam rooms.
Yeah.
But they had ADEC equipment, which is nice, and it was fairly new. I just really liked the commercial building and the landscaping, and I was like, "This is smooth." This is a nice practice. The practices for sale in Bellingham were kind of dusty and old, and they had like 7-foot ceilings.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't want to spend $700,000 for this. But in Mount Vernon, the practice was in a nice location and nice equipment. And so I pursued it, bought it, and then just poured myself into it, hours and hours of improving it. Everything from like painting the walls. I did so much of that myself. I wouldn't think about that.
Yeah.
Just changing the artwork, buying equipment. I loved everything. I loved the first experiences with my accountant, Brian Bray. I had a great relationship with him. He taught me so much about business, about investing in equipment, and growing the practice from 3 rooms to we've got 10 rooms now.
Yeah.
We don't use all of them. Kind of use it for this and use it for 3D printing now, or like photography. But we operate out of probably 8 rooms. So I love it. I love the expansion that we did little by little over the years. It was always something that was a challenge and kept me occupied.
Yeah. What's it like to look back now?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I remember thinking that I needed to buy 100 practices, buy 2 practices, then 3, then 5, then 10, and scale. But I got some advice from Brian about, he had seen a bunch of dentists. He sees dental practices. He sees dentists that own 3 practices and ones that own 1. And his perspective was the 1 practice owners were always happier and sometimes wealthier because they had one thing to focus on, 1 supply budget, 1 group of people. But the ones that owned 3 practices were like spread thin, and you just only have so much time in the day that, and your problems are a little bit easier to manage when it's just 1 location.
Yeah.
So he told me that. So I thought about buying. I got close to buying a second practice, but I just didn't think that it was going to be a good use of my time to be traveling between offices. So I never did. And I invested in other things over the years, but I just stayed focused on this 1 place.
And what's been the biggest thing you've learned with growing a team and leadership?
Oh yeah, when I started, we just had such a small team. I remember that our office receptionist was carrying a cordless phone like you'd get at your house.
Yeah.
And that's what we used for our office phone, was a cordless, like a Panasonic cordless phone. We didn't even have business phones. That's how small the practice was. So we grew from 3 employees, to a team now that basically has 3 parts, like the business team at the front, the clinical team, and then the hygiene department.
Yeah.
So there's kind of 3 parts to any dental practice. So that's how I see it. And the way we structure it is we have a whiteboard, which is, what a whiteboard is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like a chalkboard, and we write up all our problems on it. And so anything that happens during the day, like, oh, shoot, this mistake, basically we need to tell everyone about this. So we write that on the whiteboard. And we have meetings where we just hit all those points, everyone gets to hear it. So I have micro meetings with each subset of the team, like a few people at a time. I think that works better than a whole team meeting, but we do have meetings where we all are getting together, usually once a month.
What about the biggest lesson, like for someone owning a business? What would that be for leading a team and growing a team?
I would say something I've heard, that you need to be fearless. That would be the biggest lesson, or probably the biggest picture. Well, one of the things I think that many people fail is they just don't take a risk. Now, for some reason, they're fearful about, I don't know, failure. And that's tough. I think that it's more of a challenge now than it's ever been. When I was younger, I was fearless, and the tough thing now for me is combining the fearless attitude of my 20s and 30s with the wisdom of my 40s and 50s. If you can combine those, and that's powerful.
Yeah.
Because you're not as wise as you are with life experience of your 40s and 50s. But the problem with 40 and 50-year-olds is that they don't take risks anymore.
Yeah.
So the big picture is to do not fear and keep that attitude.
What about advice for a 20-year-old about to go into the world?
One thing that I would say to a 20-year-old is to make as many connections as possible. Get organized with your connections, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Get a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
I've had mentors over the years where I wasn't afraid to call them up, ask for help, and just learn, just hang out, maybe play golf and talk. I've picked up so much from just being around people that I wanted to be around, that they were willing to have me with them.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? So that is what I would do, is meet and make connections, because you'll learn something from each person you're with. Like Devin Grillo is one of them, and like Greg Grillo.
Yeah.
That's an example. As you're learning about marketing, those guys are great. And there's other ones in marketing that I've really enjoyed, like Corey Kalinsky from Legwork. He built up Legwork, which was great. And he was a good relationship. And I like Pro Impressions too.
Gotcha. What about leadership techniques, I guess? Advice.
Okay, so leadership techniques
with scaling a team.
For me, getting organized with your meetings and time and notifications and reminders, and staying positive with your team. People operate so much better in a positive mindset. I probably have the tendency of getting, too serious, which then quickly becomes like critical, and having the high stress, high pressure So you have to combine being positive and optimistic around people, but also taking action, maybe letting someone go when they're not performing. That's not very positive, right?
What is
That's a
that?
difficult
Yeah.
thing.
What leads to that? A performance issue? Is that just like not putting in the time to?
Well, when you're noticing someone's having personal problems and they're just not contributing anymore, and they might be showing up late, or they're missing a bunch of days, and you're trying to stay positive, but you're noticing this, it's hard to combine staying positive and encouraging everyone, and you want to be the loving boss,
Yeah.
but also doing what's necessary to keep the business at a high standard.
Yeah.
Is tough, because a lot of dentists are afraid. Like I said, they're operating out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to make changes in the office that they probably need to make.
Yeah.
So that's another spectrum, or basic balance. But making sure that everyone is operating at their highest values. So if you're a business manager, that they're feeling like they're doing a great job, and they're right where they should be. They're using their gifts and talents.
Yeah.
And if they're not, then move them to a role where they are, or another job where they're going to be better at it.
Yeah.
And they're going to feel better. They're going to feel like, hey, I can manage this, and
Yeah.
that might be better for them. In the Air Force or in the military, they call it relieved,
Mm-hmm.
relieved from duty. And that makes a lot of sense. In business as well. It might be a relief for someone.
Yeah.
If you need to let them go. And that seems like a negative thing at the time, but in retrospect, you'll know that it's the right move for their health.
Good advice, Dad. Nice.
Thanks.
Nice.